This is the Outliers Edge podcast, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity by taking them to the edge of their comfort zone so that they can lead us to the edge of what's next. I'm your host, Niiamah Ashong. Let's do this. Hello there. Niiamah Ashong here, founder of Outliers Edge, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. It's fun for me right now because as I'm saying like Niiamah Ashong and introducing myself, I had a moment right when we started this where I almost introduced myself as Niiamah Ashong. And if you don't know this, for 20 years, I went by the name Nemo. It was a nickname that was given to me in high school. And then the movie Finding Nemo came out, and it actually ended up being a name that I continued forward with. And not a nickname that I continued forward with, but a name that I continued forward with. It was on my resume in quotes. It was the way that I introduced myself to people. It was like, hi, I'm Nemo, like the fish. And the smiles that would come on their face, I knew how to like get into spaces. And I knew what that name was giving me. You see, it went from being a nickname to being a name, and eventually ended up being like a cover, a persona that I could take on. And through that period of time, while I really felt like Nemo, there was something that was missing. And it wasn't until late in 2019 when I had a transformational experience, a conversation similar to the one that you're going to witness here today and be a part of. That it wasn't until that moment that I realized that like what was missing was really me. You see, I had gone out and found a way to be out in the world. I would say I was well known, but not known well. And I really wanted people to know me well. I was like, I have so many acquaintances, so many people I was friendly with, like everyone knew my name, but in terms of friends, like very little, like in terms of like people really, I felt that desire to be called on and like to be included in a way that went beyond, I don't know, whatever Nemo was trying to bring in. All right. And I felt that space of it being missing. Although I didn't know that it was there. It wasn't there. In fact, I was out there saying I wanted to be well known and known well. But the thing was, at that point, I didn't know myself well. I didn't know myself. I didn't know different emotions. I didn't know how to be and how to be me and still be successful. I know how to be Nemo and be successful. But how to be me and successful, that was something different. So for the last few years, you've actually seen me on this journey here as Niiamah Ashong, where in my mind, every success means more. Everything, like to be able to do it as Niiamah as opposed to Nemo really has its own impact. And I think that in a way of putting it here, there's a way that I found the value of me, and I've been leveraging that while coupling it with what Nemo offered to be able to create all that that you're seeing now and what will come in the future. So today we get a chance to, I didn't think I was going to start this conversation this way. I was literally just about to go and bring you in and let you know about who we're talking to, someone who's really important to me and very special to me. And I'm going to introduce her in just a bit. But one of the things that you'll find here when we have these conversations is that what gets said in the conversation is far less important than like how we are being in the conversation. This is not a podcast where you listen and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, they said do X, Y, and Z, so I'm just going to go out and do it. Trust me, there'll be some insights that come for you that way. There'll be some information, I should say, that comes to you that way, and you can use it as a takeaway or not. But what I really am enjoying about these conversations is the kind of the internal parts, the parts that don't get spoken, the parts where you may not know that I almost stumbled in my own identity like right when we started off this whole thing, and to make that into something where that doesn't need to be hidden, and to be in the ongoing practice that literally everything that we do has value to someone and may have value to someone at some point. In fact, the person that I'm talking to today, her name is Samantha, and she's someone that is truly incredible. In fact, while we were getting ready before we hit record here today, she said she was telling me about her aspirations for today. And she said, and at some point, I hope this will be valuable for someone. And that was like music to my ears. I told you this, Sam, because I've been in conversations with people where they put up a front, they put on the mask, the recording button hits on, and all of a sudden they change into their, you know, professional persona or who they want to be, like, and we miss out on who they actually are. We miss out on that, and I really think that you have. I think it speaks to why I'm so excited that you're in my world, why I'm so excited to spend time with you and to continue to help others get to know you as well, because you're someone who puts first things first. And what I like, you're incredibly successful in the activities you've taken on, from business to invest into to work that you do in the social sector. Like you've done a lot of different things, and but who you've been, as I get to know you more, to hear more of the stories, and I've heard more of your accomplishments, that's the thing that continues to impress me. The thing about you where regardless of how other people have decided the right way is, you take a look and you look at what is actually most important here, and how do we want to go about doing it. And sometimes you come up with a way that most other people wouldn't even think was possible to be successful, and then you pull it off. And then you come off and you do something else and you pull it off. And what I get from you is that, like, you're able to operate in a world. I'm not saying it's easy, but I do notice that the level of integrity that you bring to yourself and to the projects and to the people that you surround yourself with. So Sam, that is the reason why I'm glad that we're in conversation. That's the reason I'm glad that you're in my world here, at least in this moment. It's really, really wonderful to be in conversation with you. How are you today?
I'm good, Niiamah. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks so much for the very kind introduction. I just wanted to say, starting off with your name, as a person who was introduced to you as Nemo at first, and then kind of watched you reclaim your name Niiamah and having to get used to that. I definitely thought that, it was an interesting journey, and I'm so glad to have been witness to that, because I've seen the way that you've reclaimed your identity and just how much it's also tied to your journey with Outliers, because it's all about kind of like being authentic to who you are, your commitment to that. So, I'm sure it wasn't an easy journey. It was an easy decision, switching your name, or reclaiming your name, rather, I should say. So super proud of you for doing that. And I've also seen how much more comfortable you are using Niiamah too. So I think that's something that it's been really lovely to watch and witness.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we're going to get started in this conversation, however the conversation gets started. And you talked about, like, the experience around, like, how you had to get used to that. I think about you as someone who's had maverick ideas. Like, most people might think one thing about you, or most people might think that there's certain ways that things need to get done, and then, like, Sam will come out with something like, hey, here goes how we really can move forward, and it may not be anything that anyone else has thought of before. I'm kind of curious for you. What's going on through my mind is, like, that idea of, like, it's people like you having to get used to the name change. It was actually a simple, once I was complete with Nemo, it was like done. I was like, everything was done. Everything was just Niiamah. I'm curious for you, as you go through life, and you come up with, you operate the way that you do, and you come up with, whatever maverick idea that you have, or whatever, just, I don't know, this might just be just a regular idea for you. How's it work for you, like, as people get used to, like, what it is that you actually bring to the table, as opposed to what they may think that you're going to bring?
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. It's a story, because I actually took on responsibility relatively young. And contrary to kind of like how you've initially phrased this, like, podcast about, like, the power bring to the table without the titles, I actually got a title pretty young. So I was former CEO of Conjunct Consulting, and at the age of 24, I believe. And so, I'd say that probably one of the youngest non-founder CEOs anywhere in Singapore. And so to me, kind of for a while, it took a little bit of adjustment, in the sense that I leaned on my title a lot, and at the same time felt awkward about introducing myself that way. So I had a pretty experienced team. Everyone on my team was at least like 8 years more experienced than I was, and I was super proud of putting the team together, and incredibly gratified that they chose to work with me. But at the same time, I would go into meetings and, instead of like going in, like stepping forward boldly and shaking the hand of whoever I'm meeting and saying, oh, I'm Samantha, CEO of Conjunct Consulting, I always kind of ended up introducing my team first, and my team ended up introducing me. So
Mm.
I always felt like that was an interesting experience looking back at that now, that like, if you don't feel like if there's any part of you that doesn't feel like you were ready for that title, I think it comes off, right? But at the same time, over time during the experience, like, because I end up sitting across the table of a lot of like 50, 60-year-old leaders, both in the social sector as well in the corporate sector, I got more comfortable with myself. I got more comfortable with the role, with the job, and also I learned to believe more around my own story of why I'm doing it and what I could bring to the table. And then all of that kind of just went away. So like, now when I walked into a room, I could introduce myself, but also I no longer felt like it was important to name my title, just my name. And I think from there, people could understand exactly, what was my authority in the room, but also what I stood for. And that to me felt more powerful in the long run.
Yeah, as you say this, I can feel like my own body relaxing in there, where it's like to not have to be in a place of introducing the title, but just like your name in and of itself, like can stand alone. Am I hearing that right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking right now because you're sitting across the table from people who were like twice your age at that time, right? And you went through whatever like growth journey was necessary for that point. How has that like supported you in like what you're doing right now? How those experiences kind of like shaped and supported you for the types of things you're doing now?
Yeah, I think there was something very interesting in that, because when responsibility is handed to you at a relatively young age, you both have the sense of fearlessness because you don't know how hard it's going to be.
Mm.
Um, but at the same time, like having gone through that and having succeeded with that, and you also come out the end with more confidence and bravery. So you now know how hard it's going to be, but you still succeeded nonetheless, and you still did a good job. And so that definitely prepared me for any bigger challenges, or, yeah, I would say challenges or missions that I've decided to take on after that. So I think the internal journey of, being the person that says, I am going to do this, initially from a sense of like, because I can, without knowing how hard it is, to because I can, because now that I know how hard it is, I know how strong I am too. So I think that journey has definitely been able to build a sense of confidence in me. It's also built a sense of confidence in knowing that I don't know everything that I don't know, but I will figure out a way.
Mm.
And I think that's really important because, like you said, I have done many different things in the sense of like moving to like from sector to sector. I started international development and then moved into impact investing, and now shifting more into impact based and led venture capital investing. So I think to me that transition, obviously each new journey has come with its own challenges and its own like lexicon and norms and just understanding of each individual sectors. But at the same time, that confidence in knowing that if I take who I am as a person and the things that I stand for into each new sphere and arena that I play in, I both have the humility to learn everything I need to learn, but at the same time have a power within me as long as I stay true to what I believe in and what I stand for.
Mm. That really resonates strongly here, Sam. Like I get curious for you here. Um, when you think about some of the power that's within you and some of the things that you carry from one sector to another, one chapter to the next, what would you say are like the three things that like have brought you the furthest, or the three things that you're proudest of bringing along with you as you go along?
Yeah, one is definitely in the notion of figuring out or not being limited by what the world says is the norm or is impossible.
Mm.
So much of my work at Conjunct was trying to figure out how do I bring a network of really talented people who are also incredibly busy together to be able to help create more good and more impact, but be it through working with nonprofit organizations, social enterprises, or corporate leaders. And the convention is that everyone's really busy, no one has time to do any additional volunteering work, especially if they're not getting paid, especially if these are people with crazy, like 9 to 5, like 9 to 9
Mm-hmm.
jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned there is that if you give them a vision to believe in and you show how their work meaningfully contributes to the people that they're working with and the world at large, I think there is a hunger deep in all of us that wants to do good and wants to contribute, wants to make a difference in the world. And it's all about how can we harness that and continuously show them that they do make a difference in a meaningful way. So that's one thing that I've continuously carried through my life, even now, as I built kind of like my team, as I built advisors to the fund, as I continue to bring people along with me in my journey. I think that's something that has stayed with me, just being able to see people's not just potential in terms of their strengths and their talents, but also their potential in terms of their desire to want to give back and be part of a growth journey, and be part of a story where they do make meaningful change in the world. So that's number one. Number two, I think definitely it's in terms of being able to go where people don't necessarily usually go to. So people who know me know that I am super anti-hype. I mean,
When you say anti-hype, what does that mean to you?
yeah. So I mean, I based in Silicon Valley. I just went for like, LA Tech Week this past week, where every half of the things about crypto and Web3. And no doubt, I definitely think there's a lot of potential there, and there's an interesting ideas that coming out of that space. But as a person, like that's not where I play. That's not where I want to make my difference and my mission. I am the person who is down in the nitty-gritty of like how to give people in rural areas access to the internet. How do I give people who live like a day's walk from the nearest health center access to healthcare? Like these are things that may not be seen as sexy as like NFTs or whatever. But to me, like that's where I want to play, right? When everybody else is like, oh, like, should we invest in Silicon Valley startups, B2B SaaS? I'm like, no, I want to invest in this like super hustler entrepreneur in Nigeria. So I think being able to go where other people don't necessarily dare to thread, or where people or don't fit within the notion of like what is popular or what is hyped, is something that's really important to me. Because to me, it's like if everybody is there already, then what is my utility in being there, right? So I think that's another part that's key to me too.
Yeah, I know I asked for three. If you have a third one, feel free to put it in here. But like, there's a lot in both of the first two that you just brought in that I'm like, we can even just slow down on that, and there would be a lot of gold there. So let me just check in with you. Do you have the third one like readily available that you want to put out here?
I mean, I do want to pause and just go through the first two first, because I think there's a lot there. And then if it
Yeah.
comes up later on, I'm happy to share my third. But yeah.
All right, great. Question for you here. Before I ask the question, did you know the answer to that?
Interestingly, no.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think like through the asking, it kind of made me pause and think about how do I distill all the things that I've experienced and learned into three things. I think that's the hard part. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really cool way of putting it in here, where it's like, I'm willing to go to places that people won't go. And that actually got me like really perked my thoughts. It's very intriguing. It's counterintuitive. And I was really, and the other part of it is I'm like, oh, so do I wonder how you do it. Like, that's literally what came up. Cause for me, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to go in a conversation. Right. So like when I'm coaching with someone, I'm like, all right, I hear it. They've kind of put out the low hanging fruit. And we're supposed to go down this story that they're about to tell me. But what if we didn't? Like, what might become available if we just went to some other way in the conversation? So I can see how I do it from that perspective. But it was really cool to hear how like you look at it, and you're like I'm surrounded by people who have a number of tools around them, but the problems that they're trying to solve, I'm like, you can go ahead and solve those. Like they're good enough, but for you, you're like, this is where my attention's at. This is where I'm focused. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
the way you phrased it.
Yeah. So there was something in like okay, I'll say this here, because I as we're talking, I have to kind of balance two things. One, I love hearing about like what you do out in the world, right? So I'm also like, at times I might get like sucked into like finding out like and asking more about that. And for the purpose of this conversation, like I want to talk about like who you be in the world. All right. So I have to like pull that in. You'll see sometimes I get like excited on one way or the other. on the who you be part. What struck me and why, and part of why I was like, I know there's a third, but I want to like slow down right now, was the level of like assuredness that came through. Like you're like, I am the person who wants to take on these challenges. I am the person who goes to places that most other people won't go, or explores things in ways that like that other people won't do. It was very cool being on this side of the conversation and just like hearing the fidelity that was there, and like the self-trust. So I want to put that out into this space for a little bit here. Give you a chance to respond to that if any part of that feels like good to respond to, and if not, we'll continue on. But I really want to just put that into our conversation right now.
No, it's super interesting to me that you brought that up, because this is the first time I'm saying it like that.
Mm.
So it's also interesting to see kind of being able to just say the words out loud and how true it felt to me. I think was also a really profound experience for me too. So happy to go there.
Yeah. It's one of the things that's interesting about like the ways I choose to have conversation, because I'm always like, I always in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, like, yes, it'll be valuable to someone at some point, but I really want it to be valuable. I'm human, right? I want it like, and at the same time, I'm like, but like, you never know what will actually be. You don't know what it is. It's not like the fact that like I'm getting impacted by the way that you're talking. I'm here and I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Like she's able to find these paths that others aren't going, and she like there's a level of conviction and commitment to you, you know, and it's really cool too, where it's like what I also get about you, like when I hear that, is like you get that there are problems, there are a number of different problems that can be solved, and you choose to take on a certain type of problem that really will like impact people, you know. And that was really, it's like look, I respect the problem you're taking on, and like this is what I'm about. It's there's something incredibly powerful in that, and also just to be around like that level of I would say like solidity in, well, let me ask you, what is it for you? Like for me, it's like solidity in mission. That's how I think about it. But like you might think about it something in a different way. What comes to you? Like how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, Steve Jobs famously said that you can only connect the dots backwards, and I think that's true to some extent. I think I've always known that I wanted to do something in the tech space, even from a relatively young age. And I do think kind of like my education and my parents were giving me that exposure. So I got an early experience of like volunteering and doing work in the impact space, and I really loved it. So I always knew that that's what I wanted to do. But I had no idea what shape or form it's going to take. I had no clue what region I was going to focus on or what particular cause areas. And so that but stayed pretty broad for me for a long time. And I just gave myself the chance to explore. So I worked for a bank, I've worked for my own consulting firm, I worked for impact investing funds. And I worked across multiple regions in Africa and Southeast Asia. Now I'm here in the US. And so it's interesting to see how things have lined up as well. And so when I was applying to grad school, I reached out to one of my very first bosses. This was when I was looking for a bank, and just for a recommendation letter. And so Stanford has this policy where you can request to see kind of like your application materials. And because he had checked a box that allowed me to basically get access to the recommendation letter, I had a chance to look at it. And he talked about how, you know, like even from that relatively young age, I think I was like 21 or something. He was like, you know, you could see that Sam is very much using the resources of the bank to try and create as much impact as she could. And I was like, first of all, okay, I did not know it was that obvious.
Subtlety.
And second of all, it's I was like, yeah, you know what? That's a pretty good summation of what I've done throughout all the different opportunities I had in different organizations that I've worked at or led. And so, you know, that's something that both subconsciously has driven me, but at the same time, being able to name it and say it to myself and to other people has also then made me more conscious in decisions that I was making moving forward as well. So I found that both that kind of like having that broad principle, but also then be able to distill it out into kind of like almost mission statements for myself has been super useful, and both reflecting on how my past has built on one another, but also how I want to continue moving to the future with intention. So now for me, that mission statement is really around wanting to channel the best resources into solving the world's biggest problems. And this is something that came up through kind of a conversation that I had with a really good friend. And she was like, oh, you've done a range of things. What would you, if you had to distill what you've done and what you want to do into one sentence, what's it going to be? And I started like, oh, impact investing, social innovation. And she's like, no. All of these are just buzzwords. Like, who are you and what do you stand for and what do you want to do? And that really made me pause and like think, okay, how can I describe in a way that my grandmother would understand? Right. And that's how I came up with that statement, to want to channel the best resources to solving the world's biggest problems.
Sam, I am so grateful that you brought this up. There's a lot in what you just said. So do you mind if I like unpack a little bit with you here? Also because, all right, so there's a couple different things. I'm going to start off with like that last part, channel the best resources to solving the world's greatest problems. Right. When I hear that, I'm like, there's a level of like, yep, that's you. Right. I also like you, like that I can explain to my grandmother as opposed to like to a 6-year-old. I like that actually makes, I'm like, that I get. I can understand. I can understand that there's a level of ease that comes in there where I'm like, oh yeah, that's clear. I also picked up here then that you have like multiple mission statements, and what I get, what I think I'm picking up is that you have different mission statements at different points in your life. And so right now, the one that's most current, most prime, the one that's moving you forward, the one that's driving you forward is channeling the best resources to solve the world's biggest problems. Right. But I'm hearing, if I'm right here, that you've had many missions over your life, and they probably all still tie into one big mission. Maybe they all tie into this one. But I'd be really curious if you can speak a little bit to, not to the past mission statements. Those aren't like, they're important for you, but it's not really where I'm looking at. But just like in the process of like constantly almost like either re-evolving or like recalibrating direction based on this mission. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have many different mission statements. I think they've just gotten more clear over the years.
Yep.
So I think when I was younger, the thing that drove me the most was how can I create the most impact in my life? And I think part of that's just the fact, it just goes kind of goes back to a little bit my origin story, my background, which is that, I was adopted from China, grew up to middle class Singaporeans, and so much of how I see life and my life in the world is that, I really lucked out. I was part of the 1% who, was born in poverty and then grew up relatively comfortably. And so much of my like privilege and opportunities had come from having grown up in Singapore to a middle class family. And so there is this driving force of wanting to give back, because I feel like I gained so much undeserved luck. I didn't do anything. I was just born, right? So, and so much of it just obviously goes to my parents who chose to adopt me. Yeah, so I think for me, that's always been a driving force. So I always feel like, okay, I need to pay it forward. I need to pay it back somehow. And it wasn't until I think through my experiences of working with people and working within the communities as helping, and that it became less about me and more about the problems I was trying to solve and the communities and the countries and the leaders that I was working to support and help them bring their vision and mission to life. And so I think for me, that shift, even though, obviously creating impact is still a big part of my story and my mission, but the shift of focus away from me and the impact that I want to create to more around how can I channel resources in the world to these other leaders, and solving these big problems, and that focus on that and the end community there was an important shift for me. And I think that really helped in situating kind of how or rather what I wanted to do in this world and how that would translate in types of kind of opportunities and platforms that I was building.
Yeah, I really I feel you on that, and I respect you a lot, Sam, because as I'm hearing like where your focus evolved to, I'm also hearing that you didn't lose yourself in that process too. Because I've talked to a number of people who are out in the world and they're finding different ways to do good. And they aren't taking care of themselves in the process, right? It's so much about the other leaders. It's so much about the problem that they're taking on, that they haven't like found a way to also like honor themselves through that process. And one of the things I really respect about you is that like you find ways to do both. You find ways to like to really be there. You're essentially, it's like you're channeling the resources, the best resources, but you yourself as the conduit of that don't have to get burned out in the process. Can you speak a little bit to like to that a little bit? Like, well, firstly, let me just say that and make sure that like you hear that like I see you in that way. I think it's something special about the way that you choose to go about it. Right, you're choosing paths that other people don't go down in order to solve these problems. Right. I want to just first acknowledge you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. It's not an easy journey for sure. It's still very much a process of learning for me. One of my really good friends here actually hosted this event the other night called Flow with Money. Um, and so she's this amazing woman who kind of sits you down. So everyone kind of like gathers in a circle, but it's always someone in the middle. And just based on the prompt, which that night was possibility, they talk a little bit. They say like a couple of sentences about what that means to them and what's that bringing up for them in that moment. And then she creates completely improvised like a song on the spot, and then the band comes in, and then everyone chimes in with their own like harmonization or their own beats or their own like addition to it. And that created such a beautiful environment and setting. And so like I like somewhere about 3/4 way through the night, something came up for me from an earlier sharing that someone else had done. And I was like, I felt called to really kind of stand in the middle of that circle and talk about, how so much of my work and where I'm in life right now, it's about showing people the possibility, but also embodying the possibility of what can be done. And something that I always struggle with, and Niiamah, I'm sure you know this because we've had conversations about this, was actually seeing myself the way that the people see me, but not being limited by that, but also being able to see my power in me. And it was interesting to me that the song that she chose to, or the words that she built her song around, was really about kind of like she was like she held my hands, and she was like, okay, like lift, and she lifted them up, and she was like, just receive, just learn to receive. And that was such a profound experience for me, because I had started that sharing with, I know that I am on the cusp of something really big and powerful, and yet the closer I get to it, the more afraid I am. And that to me both represented the confidence I had, because it's not that I think or I aim, it's that I know. At the same time, that fear still speaks to something within me that's still holding me back. And so to me, it's the journey, my entire journey up to today, even in everything that started 10 years ago, has been that struggle and that balancing of that polarity of wanting to do something big and the confidence of knowing that I can because I have, and yet still juggling and managing within me that fear of letting people down or letting myself down. So it's a constant struggle. I can't say that I've figured it out, but I can say that it's a day-to-day battle, and I found ways to manage it and to keep moving forward.
Do you mind if I offer something on this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're totally like, just feel free to say no, I don't want anything. Like that's totally fine. The scent is one of my favorite things in the spaces. So let me ask it again, knowing that the scent, like you can just be like, no, I'm good with just that share. Do you mind if I offer something on that?
Go ahead. I would say no. I would not say no. I would not say no
Okay.
to a gift.
Yeah, you were talking about like the like managing and the struggle between and the balance between like the deep knowing that you have, and also still feeling the fear, right? um and as you were talking, like in my mind, I'm like the fear is like, to me, the fear is your friend on this one. And it's like, because I mean, you don't end up being someone who can channel the best resources to solve the world's greatest problems. To solve problems, you can do it. You can channel resources to solve problems, like that is someone else's thing. But to channel the best resources to solve the world's greatest problems, like, to me, that's like, if you were in a place where like fear wasn't coming along for the ride, I would be wondering if you're actually putting yourself into positions where like the biggest challenges are, the biggest growth is, the biggest opportunities are. Personally, and like you might be angry at me for this. I will take that with open arms here, but I wish that you never lose that fear, because to me, like that to me says like, oh, okay, my mentor says fear is a compass. It's like, okay, that means you're headed in the right direction. And the times where like the fear goes away, and it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, no, I've done this, I can do this, like that's when I feel that for the journey that you've been on, the journey is going on in a different direction. Doesn't mean it's the wrong direction, but it's going in a different direction. So I'm like, maybe don't battle it, embrace it. Be like, hold on, y'all. I hear this project, it doesn't scare me enough. Like it's we're missing something. We haven't gotten to the root of where this is. Are there better resources out there, or is there a better problem that we can take on? You know. So let me pause there really quickly and just like let that come in. Normally I would ask like, how do you feel around that all stuff? I'm just gonna let that like wash over you. You know, take what you want, leave what you want from that. But there is something there where I'm like, my friend, I hope that fear keeps coming along with you on this journey, because it feels like it's on your path to growth, and it feels more like an ally than an enemy.
That's an incredible reminder, and I think that that's something that I'm gonna hold on to for sure. I do think that fear also reminds me what's at stake and why
Mm,
it's important to me. And you're right. I do think that fear is a good reminder of what my North Star is too. Because if I'm not afraid at all, then clearly I don't care enough. So
yeah.
so I do think that fear has been useful. I think it's more around making sure that I don't let that fear stop me from doing what I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I heard a lot of different things with what you were saying. So it's like, I don't want to oversimplify it. Please don't, like, it's not that. Um, but I really am grateful for that share. It was a really beautiful share. And just like, uh, just hearing the story. You're gifted with telling stories, by the way. I don't know if I've told you this yet. But I could see the circle. I could like, I felt the power of hearing like receive when it was said there. Um, that is yet another one of your strengths that I want to make sure that that I bring into this space here. Um, yeah, because yeah, no, it feels like it's natural, but whatever you've done to hone that skill, please keep doing it, because you do have a gift with it. You do have a gift with it.
Thank you, Niiamah. Um, that means a lot to me, especially coming from you, who's also another very gifted storyteller.
Thanks. Like, it's funny because like you talk about receive. I was like, she's probably gonna say I'm a gifted story, or like not gifted, but like she's probably gonna say I'm a good storyteller. I'm like, I'm not a good storyteller. Like, I tell stories, but I don't know how good I am at it. And then in my mind, I'm just like, receive, receive, receive. So thank you, Sam. It's not easy for me to actually receive it, but it does feel good to hear, and I will work to take that in, and acknowledge that as well, right? I think that's one of the interesting things about like this conversation in a way that it is. Like, there's a lot of it is gift sharing, right? It's uncovering the gifts that we have, it's claiming the gifts that we have, and owning that. Um, and I'm appreciative of this moment here, because I think it speaks to the real process that comes in with like valuing yourself more, accepting and receiving more of the own gifts that you already have, and also some of the discomfort around like putting that out into the world right now. Like, you would think that with all of my training, with all the things that I'm about, the fact that I bring people in to like value themselves, like it'd be so easy for me to take in that element about the storytelling, but it's a part of myself where I still think there's room to grow. And I'm like, and I can get into the comparison game. And so I'm really grateful that this came up, because how do I say it? I think it is easy for us to see how other people come across and think that like they don't have the same doubts that we have. This is why I said I don't want to oversimplify the fear thing. It's like one path that I chose to go down. But at the same time, like, you're being real with like, this is actually what it feels like. Yes, I'm doing incredible things. Yes, like I'm sitting across from people and like and create an impact, and I'm taking on the world's biggest problems, and I'm human. And I'm not like, it's not the things that you talk about being afraid of, like I'm afraid of like the impact it will have on my friends and family. Like, it's so real. The number of people I talk to that talk about some variation of that, it's incredibly, incredibly real. And so I want to thank you for bringing in more than one side to this conversation, more than just I'm going for it and you just have to go put your head down, or whatever it is that most people tend to hear, instead just bringing the realness for you.
Just to bring up one point about, or rather my theory around just how is it that we don't always see ourselves the way other people see us, is that my theory is that we put out into the world the thing that we believe we most need.
Tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm about to jump on with you on that there, but I want to hear like what that means for you. So you put out into the world what you most need. Tell me what that means.
Yeah, I see this in terms of a lot of entrepreneurs too. So people feel a gap in their lives, whether that's could be anything from as basic as like, it's a child, I lost a family member to not being able to get healthcare in time, and therefore I built a healthcare startup to solve that problem, to something like more intangible and emotional in terms of, I know another founder who built an entire tool for people to express and show empathy, because she felt like, and show vulnerability rather, because she felt like she didn't have the space or the tools to do that. So I do think that a huge part of starting something and building something in this world comes from a place where I didn't receive that, or I didn't get a good platform for that growing up or in life. And therefore I want to help other people like me so that they don't have to struggle the way that I did.
Yeah, that resonates really strongly for me. And as you're talking, it makes me think about like the value in your experience, the value of your struggle. Like, I get it. Like, it's not lost on me. Like I said, like, hey, I know how to be well known, but I don't know how to be known well. And all I do now is help people like be known well, and actually and not without having to lose everything, that like put everything at stake, put everything at risk, right? It's an interesting thing, because the reason that I get deeper and I have more tools to go and help other people be seen, be celebrated, and be valued, is because I'm looking to do the same thing. I'm looking for that to happen for me. I'm looking to be able to do it for myself. And and I think there's another part of it for me as I'm reflecting on this year. Like the two things that come out is like, my tools get stronger the more that I pull out into the world for this. This might be my path in life, to never feel seen, to never feel understood, or like, that just might be my path in life. That's fine. But what I'm loving about it is that as this journey continues, what I'm putting out in the world is exactly, how do I say it? It's how I know that like I'll never stop. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's how I know I'll never stop. And it's the place where I do, as we're talking about we're talking about the mission statements earlier. Right now, I said I champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. When we met, I don't know if I even had anything that I said there. For a long time, I'm bringing together a truly inclusive and empowered world. That's still what I do, because to me, true inclusion is a world where people are seen, celebrated, and valued for who they are. It's all the same stuff. But I think I really, really love that element there around, like, some people say, like you work on what you most need, that kind of thing. It's actually really trippy, working with other people on things. So I'm like, is that a you thing, or did I just, like, is that a me thing right now? But I think I really want to just, like, acknowledge you for your dedication and your integrity to seeing yourself as fully as you can, and to, like, seeing and acknowledging and receiving your own power, and choosing to find ways to both bring what you have out into the world, channel that which is beyond you out into the world, and to, like, not lose yourself in the process, but also not let yourself get in the way of what it is that, like, fully stop you from getting, like, what you're here to get done. I think it's a tremendous way of being in the world. And Sam, I'm honored to be in your sphere. Like, let me put it that way. I'll put a period at the end of that, but it is truly with honor that I feel that.
Thanks. I definitely appreciate you saying that, and I'm gonna take a moment to receive all of that, and continue reflecting on that too. Just working on the ability to receive, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, going back to the point about putting on through what we thought we need, and that's also kind of like coming through the point where, like, some of our biggest inspirations and our biggest missions in life also come through a point of pain or challenge. I mean, the part of the reason why, like, a huge part of my mission now is about channeling resources to solving the world's biggest problems, because, I had such a hard time fundraising conjunct. And that was a huge source of pain and a huge source of I would say pain, and it was a big challenge for me. And so, to me, it's like, I don't want any other, like, social entrepreneur, any entrepreneur who's building something that they believe is good for the world to ever face that again. So I think for me, that's still something that the vision I have now would not have come into existence and not for that very painful but also very transformative experience. And I definitely think that, and that also, now's a good time to also bring up my third point. Just to circle back to, which is that, you can have a bigger mission in life, and you can have a mission statement, and you can have some idea of, like, where you want to go and have a plan. But ultimately, I do find that the biggest gifts that life gives you is the people that you meet, and then allowing yourself to get shaped by them. And that just kind of, like, brought it up again, because you talked about kind of like us being in each other's spheres, and how that also transforms our work and how we do and see things. And for me, that's definitely true. I get this question a lot, where someone's like, you grew up in Singapore, you lived a good chunk of your life in Singapore. How did you end up, in emerging markets? Or how do you end up now, being focused in Africa? And so, and the answer to that really is the people that I was meeting and just how inspiring they were. Like, I first grew a passion for emerging markets because I was talking to farmers out in the fields of Myanmar. I was so inspired by their passion for what they were doing, but also their very steadfast sense of mission, in the sense that, they really feel like their work was important in feeding their family and the community. And so to me, like, if somebody is doing such humble work, can see their meeting and can feel really passionate about that, and that drives them, what more people who have the resources to do more. And so to me, like, that's, and I was also just inspired by kind of how resilient they are in the work that they do in the environments that they were in. And so that really solidified my desire to support entrepreneurs like that. And I went to Africa and was working for a Nigerian healthcare company. And the team that I met with there, and the patients I was meeting with, and just their spirit to be able to turn what is typically kind of like, what some people say is a death sentence in their life, into a positive, in terms of helping them eat better and exercise better and live a better life. was really inspiring to me. And, I felt like there was something really special about that community and wanting to continue to support that and support entrepreneurs who are working to better the community of people who are trying to get access to healthcare. So I think to me, like, just the people I was meeting continues to drive what is important to me and the kind of people and communities I want to support through whatever I do. And that's not something that I could have foretold or planned for, like 10 years ago. So I think the ability to just let yourself seek inspiration in people that you're meeting and let that be kind of a guiding force into how you do your work and what you choose to do your work based on is hugely important to me.
A lot of things are coming up as you say this here. We'll start wrapping up the conversation, but when we get done, there's some people that are coming to mind as you're talking. I'm like, oh, I really think I can connect you with them either now or in the future. There's some things that are coming up, so I'm going to put that into this space. One of the things that was flowing through me as you were saying that was this idea of like when you talked about like the people you're around, like not forgetting. In my mind, the way I felt it was like, oh yeah, I have a lot of experience with people, and oftentimes I'm like I miss what's right in front of me. When I hear you say this, you're like, you know how I got here? It's because I paid attention to all the things that like I was paying attention to, and I was out in Myanmar and I was talking to people, and I was and that curiosity kept growing so that it kept leading me in different places. You even started up this podcast here today, where I was like, oh, for the last year or so, I've been out there trying to go find new. And it occurred to me just about a few weeks ago, I'm like, why? I'm absolutely surrounded by amazing people. And like, what if I poured my heart and soul into supporting them and helping them out in the world right now? There'll be, and I've always met new people, like you've been pouring yourself into like real problems, and there will always be more problems and there will always be more people. But like, there's this element that really, you help make clear within me as you're talking around like just like the acknowledgement of essentially, and I'm going to put it in this term here because of you, the resources that we have around us, the people, like not like the resource in terms of the people that are there, not in terms of what they can do, but in terms of like what they give us simply by existing. I really want to I'm grateful for that, because there's an element, you've used the word humility a few times, and there's something in that just feels really true. Like just to be like humble enough to see what is actually right in front of you, as opposed to having to go reach out for something that like is missing what is right, like an arm's length away.
I think the part that really stood out for me is what you said about how, being inspired by people who are there, not being inspired by their work necessarily, but more about who they are and just the fact that they exist. I think you said it better than me, but I think that's definitely something that's going to stay with me. Yeah.
I'm grateful for you, Sam. I think this is a good time for us to close this conversation down, to complete this conversation. There's a lot to you, and I'm glad that you're bringing that in. And I'm also really glad that you brought in like the questions, like how did someone who like grew up in Singapore work out in like this region here, right? Because I was going to ask, I was like, I feel like if I didn't ask this question, I wouldn't be doing her justice in this in this environment. So let's say here, I want to thank you for coming here and being you. As you were talking, some of the things that was really great was I'm like, this is just her life. Like talk like there is that was the wonderful part about this here. It's like there were a lot of incredible things that you shared that was just like, yeah, and then on Tuesday 3 years ago I did this, like like it wasn't like there wasn't a to do. It's just like who you are is tremendous, and I just really want to put that in here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for what you're doing here. There are going to be some people who will want to continue a conversation with you. It might happen tomorrow. It might happen 10 years from now. Like you said, we don't really know. But for today, like what's the best way if someone wanted to continue a conversation with you, what's the best way that they may be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, just add me on LinkedIn. I'm just Samantha Lee. Otherwise, just get in touch. My email is samantha@stonesoup.partners. That's STONESOUP.partners. Yeah, and just feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat about kind of any of the experiences, or like, just interested to talk about impact or emerging markets or Africa, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And I strongly recommend that you do that, Sam. You're incredible. Any last thing you want to say for, I call it like for the good of the order, but like anything else you want to say just to like help us feel complete here, whether it's to me, whether it's for you or for anyone that's listening?
I think the last thing what I would love to say is just, you don't really know where life is going to take you. So just trust in your instincts and just believe in your power to make things happen.
And there we are. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Niiamah.
We're just getting started. Take 10 seconds to think about your greatest insight from today's conversation. And if you're ready to go and bring this to a deeper, more applicable level for you, come and join us in an upcoming masterclass. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass to be coached live and to bring your aspirations, your goals, and your challenges and have them handled in real time. This is high flame, high impact, high transformation. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass and come experience your next level of leadership.